Hi Year 7, Mr. Tapley here to walk you through the Year 7 Civics and Citizenship CAT. This lesson we're going to be reviewing just some general advice and recommendations from the dev task, some feedback there, reflecting upon areas for improvement in the Civics and Citizenship CAT, which depending on your class and how much time you've missed in term 1, it might be a video that you're uploading to Compass, or it might be an oral presentation to the class. Our success criteria for this lesson is obviously to carefully read the dev feedback on our individual assessment, carefully read the CAT instructions and rubric, ask questions, ask lots of questions in every lesson, at every point of the lesson and out of the lesson. But especially during the assessment period, it's important to ask questions in case you don't understand, or you think you've done something right, but you're wondering how you can do it better, or you're wondering, how can I do something differently and improve upon last time? Always ask questions. If your house is burning, if your house is burning to the ground, you don't just sit there and you're like, oh, this is the end of that. You ask questions. You call someone. You call the fire department. The teachers are your fire department. If you're sitting there in class and you're like, I don't know what to do, don't just sit there. Ask a question. We're happy to help if you let us know that you need help. And then we're going to reflect on a few strategies to improve before the assessment. If I can get my technology to work. There we go. So the dev task, the developmental task, is designed to model the skills and knowledge assessed in your CAT, your Common Assessment Task. So every dev and every subject really should be preparing you for the CAT. It's not just some random assignment that we've created the night before we come into school. It's a rough draft to help you prepare and plan for the end of unit assessment. So to complete the CAT to the best of your abilities, it's very important to carefully read the feedback provided in your dev. So quickly examining your score or grade doesn't help you. It gives you a single number that you're never going to use again. You need to read and reflect upon the comments provided by your teacher. That's the most important part of your feedback. If you want to grow, if you want to develop and improve and progress your skills and your knowledge throughout your 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you need to really read the feedback. It's also important to ask questions. As I said earlier, if you don't understand the feedback or you need additional support, ask a question. We're very happy to help. So just a few general recommendations. You're going to have an opportunity for each student, each pair, each group to discuss your dev feedback with the teacher individually. However, a few general recommendations, a few general themes that we're noticing that hopefully every student, every group can use to improve. It's important to clearly define the key terms in your topic. So if your topic is about identity, it's important that you tell us before you start the presentation arguments, before you start telling me why personal identity is more important than national identity, it's important for you to define what is identity, what is personal identity, what is national identity, how are they different? So really the first part of your presentation should be defining your essay topic. So if you're saying we need to represent Australian values, tell me what values are. If you're talking about how our country is super diverse, culturally diverse, we have a lot of multiculturalism elements in our country, define multiculturalism. It really adds to your argument if you can first tell me what your topic is about. Expand upon your arguments. I think most of you guys have some really good ideas for and against each of your topics. However, what you really need to do is just add one more sentence or one more explanation, one more example. Really, it's about explaining your arguments instead of just telling us your arguments. So getting a bit of extra detail and collecting a little bit of extra evidence, whether that's a few more examples, case studies, nations or races that we have in Australia, statistics about, how many people speak English in Australia, or research about the Indigenous Australians. So just a little bit more detail takes it from a good to a very good to an excellent. Consider how arguments and evidence can connect to Australian identity. As we look at the CAT rubric today, and even in the dev rubric, one of the things you're being assessed on is, are you connecting your topic, your arguments, to the overall topic of civics and citizenship in term 1, which was Australian identity. So the key themes that we've looked at throughout our lesson units, it's all connected to each other, and it's connected to the assessment. So if you're referencing things like multiculturalism and migration and identity and values in your topic, regardless of what topic you're looking at, that's really going to demonstrate to your teacher that you know a lot about civics and citizenship, and that's going to reflect well in your grades. So think about how you can connect those key themes to your essay topic and to your arguments. And then the conclusion. A lot of people had a very, very short conclusion, I found. It was, in conclusion, we should change the flag. The end. Drop the mic. Or, in conclusion, we believe we should make a new flag or a new holiday. Your conclusion is that. It is a conclusion. You're trying to find a solution to the problem, to the civics issue that you're investigating. It needs to outline your contention, which most of you guys have. You have a contention, a point of view, an opinion, an argument. What a few of you are missing is, again, that extra sentence, that justification, that explanation for why you are right, for why that final decision is the right choice. So we believe we should change the flag because, and then one or two sentences, one or two arguments why you are correct. You don't need to restate your entire presentation because we've just heard your presentation. I don't have that bad of a memory, but you need to justify how you've come to that decision. Now, just a bit of a refresher on the CAT itself. So you guys should have, at this point, your pairs, your topic, connected to Australian identity, and you should know that you're creating a 4 to 5 minute presentation or a video responding to your topic question. Just a quick note down the bottom there as well. If you are in a group of 3, because you have an odd number of people in your class, your presentation will be expecting a bit more. You know, it's not fair to assess a group of 3 and a group of 2 using the same amount of time. So a group of 3, we're expecting it to be a little bit longer, to have a little bit more detail. So you're probably looking at 5 to 6 minutes, I would say. And then the final speaker, you may have discussed this with your teacher already, what role they will play, but it might be a good idea to have that final speaker as the conclusion, the contention. So they would be speaking for 1 to 2 minutes about your final decision. The presentation will be assessed on your understanding of the civic issue, your connection to Australian values and identity, our overall topic for term 1, your use of research, so the level of evidence you have, how detailed is it, how many examples do you have, is it reliable research from reliable sources, or does everything come from Jono's Weebly from year 3 at Sindel South Primary, something like that. Oral presentation skills, so are you presenting something that's very engaging and interesting to listen to, or are you just staring at your notes the entire time? And then effective collaboration, which really we're assessing in class and in the assessment. Do you work well as a team? Have you used class time effectively to prepare, to plan, to research? Or have you been arguing or not using time and playing silly games in class? So it's a group assessment, which you guys know by now, but you will also be assessed individually. Because there are such clear, distinct roles, so 1 for, 1 against speaker, each team member will be assessed individually depending on their contribution to the CAT. So I guess that's to protect people from teammates who are not really doing their part and expecting the other person to do all the work. But it's also to recognize the efforts of team members who are going above and beyond and really putting in a really strong effort for their half of the CAT. So we're assessing you on a team. You will want to work as a team. However, don't think that we're not going to be judging people who are not doing any work. So don't think that you can just hide from us because it's a group assessment. We want you guys to all put in a really strong effort. You each are responsible for your contribution to the CAT. Now, the CAT rubric follows a similar structure to the dev, so it shouldn't look too scary and too unfamiliar. You've got your green and blue. We've even used the same color scheme. So each column there is a separate skill. And as you move up the column, the level of skill and the complexity required increases, which is why you get 1 mark, 2 mark, 3 marks as you move up the column. Now, as you read through the rubric, I want you guys to examine the key instructional verbs. So we've usually underlined them there. So explain, justify, connect, identify, define. Consider the difference between the different terms and the different rubric levels. So for example, in that first column, you get 1 mark for identifying a civic issue. So that's for telling us this is an issue. So identity, ta-da, 1 mark. You'd get 3 marks though if you evaluate, if you explain, if you compare, if you analyze the civic issue and the for and against, and then come to a conclusion. So that's the difference between identifying and evaluating, just adding extra detail, extra analysis, extra examples. Note, it always irritates me, and I'm sure it irritates all of your teachers, when after the assignment has been finished, after a week of the dev and a week of the CATs, and after a week of me marking them, the students ask, where is the rubric? We give you the rubric in the first lesson because we want you to look at it in the beginning, in the middle, and at the end of your assessment. You should refer to the rubric really every lesson, every minute of every lesson. Staple it to your teammate's head if you have to. You should be referring to it during the planning, the research, and the rehearsal stages. Because really, if you're putting together really an amazing presentation, but you're not doing what the rubric's asking, you're not going to get the grade you deserve. So you should be using this as your guide, as your checklist throughout the planning process, throughout the entire CAT. Now, just a bit of a final checklist for you guys to consider now that we're at the CAT stage of things, I suppose. It's important for you to, one, look at the dev feedback, one, talk about it with your teacher, but also discuss it with the other people in your group, because you might have different ideas on what is the most important thing to improve on or most important thing to change. And you might have different strategies to add or edit your presentation. It's the benefit of a group assignment is if you've got more than one person who can offer more than one idea, you're going to reach a better goal. You're going to have a shared understanding of how to improve. Again, examine the CAT rubric. Something that might be a good practice for you guys to get into in year 7 and then continue out through year 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 is to self-assess your presentation, your assessment against each criterion. Instead of waiting for us to grade it, why don't you guys put on your little teacher hats and reflect upon how can I improve? How can I meet rubric requirements? Be honest with yourself. Have I done enough to get full marks for this part? And if not, why not? And how can I fix it? Prepare your speaker notes. Obviously, that's what a lot of you guys will be doing this week. Don't just rock on to your presentation or your video filming sesh with the dev planning template. That's a starting point. It's a guide, but really you should be changing that. You should be adding to that based on the feedback. And if you have a oral presentation, you're not going to want to have an A4 piece of paper there. You're trying to, create little note cards. It's a balancing act between not having a blank note card, but on the same time, not having an entire encyclopedia of knowledge there on your note card, because otherwise you'll feel really inclined to just read off it like a book. You want to have key points, key messages, key terms on your note card that'll give you some ideas of while you're speaking, but it's not going to force you to read off your hand. So making your speaker notes is going to be something that you're looking at this week. Practice. So obviously practice makes perfect. It increases your comfort, your confidence. Rehearse and time your presentation. Each person should be rehearsing and seeing how long is their speech, because maybe your overall speech is 4 minutes long, but 3 minutes is one person. You've spent 3 minutes on the 4, but you barely have any against. So you need to practice and rehearse each part of your presentation. Consider how you can make it more engaging. So the tone of your voice, the language, your body language, your emphasis on certain arguments, certain key terms. And then another thing that I think has come out of the dev is we probably didn't give you guys enough help with navigating Compass and Google Classroom in terms of submitting files to the platform digitally. So if you're submitting a video file to Compass, and I can vouch for this after doing a number of these videos during remote learning myself, there's nothing more frustrating than putting something together, feeling really proud about it, and then you realize, oh, I didn't have my microphone on, or, oh, I had the camera pointing at the ceiling. So before you start filming, maybe do a little bit of a practice run and see, okay, have I got the video working? Am I close enough to the microphone that they can hear what I'm saying with the audio file? So make sure you're checking the video and the audio before the final submission, and make sure you're submitting things in an accessible file format. You might have already encountered this where you've submitted something from your iPad as like a Pages document or something like that, like an iOS file, and teachers can actually open it. So make sure that it's something that we can open, something that we can listen to, and something that we can see your pretty faces in. If you're really struggling with submitting files digitally, obviously ask your teachers. But for a bit of helpful advice, my face has disappeared. So in Compass Learning Tasks, if you click on your learning task, there should be, obviously this one looks a bit different because it's the teacher version, but over here where it says teacher response, you should have an option to add a file or add an attachment or add a submission, and you should just be able to click on that and then use a downloaded file from your laptop or your iPad. One of you guys in your pair or in your group should have the ability to record off your device. Otherwise, the teachers can offer you rental laptops from the Daleks inside middle school, inside the comms office. But you should just be able to click on a little button here to add a file. And then if I look at my dev task for an example, You can see that Ashan, sorry for adding you, mate, for the entire school, but Ashan has submitted his file there, and I can access that. It's a PDF file, so I can read it. So that's good to see. And if you're doing it through Google Classroom, similar sort of theory, really. So you just click on the assignment, and then when you open the assignment, in the top right where mine says, I believe, share, if I can move my giant head, there it is. So where mine says share, your version, the student version, should say turn in or hand in or something like that. And if you click on that little gray button in the top right, you'll have the option to, again, submit this file, which is the CAT file, or to add an attachment. So you just need to add your little video to that. Again, if you have questions or concerns, obviously ask your teacher. I thought I'd just give you a bit of advice, though, after seeing a few students, more than a few, struggle during the dev task. So yeah, make sure you guys are reading the CAT instructions very, very carefully. Make sure you understand your CAT topics. Make sure you are obviously checking your CAT rubric. Remember, we have given you a few support resources for each of these topics, but you shouldn't be relying on them. You should really have, if you have 3 arguments for, 3 arguments against, you should have 6 resources, really, at the bare minimum, that you're using to justify your arguments. It's more persuasive, it's more reliable if you rely on more than one source of information. So yeah, make sure you look at the rubric. So the first criterion you're being assessed on, understanding of the civic issue, very similar to the dev. If you guys remember looking at the dev rubric, we've modeled it off that. So understanding of civic issue, surprise, surprise, you're getting assessed on the dev and the same thing as the CAT. So identify, I've just kind of listed it. Develop a clear contention. So if I've identified my issue and I've got a clear opinion, a clear point of view. Evaluate, that's a higher order skill where I'm evaluating, I'm analyzing for and against equals my contention. Showing understanding of Australian values. So that's again thinking about what we've looked at in terms of Australian values, Australian identity in our Civics and Citizenship unit. So look at your notes, look at the class slides and the textbook for, I guess, a definition on what Australian values are and what values are in general. Then we've got national identity, evidence from sources, verbal presentation, so again, your tone, your delivery throughout the speech, and then teamwork makes the dream work, collaboration. So that's all I'm going to say, guys. Hopefully this wasn't too long of a video, and if you have any questions, again, ask your teacher. Yeah, best of luck on this, guys. Cheers.